Okay, we're going to now call to order this special meeting. A lot of big items on this agenda. We'll move ahead. We're going to have a copy of the agenda on display for everybody to see, but we have one in front of us. Action item number 2, item on the agenda is presentation and discussion with respect to water system improvement, funding, and implementation as presented by Municipal Finance Services Incorporated.
Before we turn the meeting over to Rick Smith, Municipal Finances, I just want to make a brief introduction here. Rick is founder and owner of Municipal Finance Services, founded in 1989. Don't know how long he was in this business before that time. Done business with 120 cities in the state of Oklahoma, and the magnitude of offerings or loans or bonds in that time is about $4.5 billion. So I asked Rick early on in this process to become involved, because I wanted to know what options there were for the city in order for the city to be best served. And without further ado, I'm just going to turn it right over to the guy that's got the meat of the presentation. Thanks, Rick.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Skiles, and Mayor and Council. It is a pleasure to be here this morning. My name is Rick Smith, and I am the president and owner of Municipal Finance Services in Edmond, Oklahoma. We like to travel in packs in this business, so I would like to introduce the rest of the group with me, if I could. Ben Oglesby, who I know several of you have met, is with my firm, and then also Alan Brooks and Nate Ellis are with the Public Finance Law Group in Oklahoma City that we work with in their role as bond counsel on these types of transactions. As Mark said, after the presentation of the Oklahoma water proposal about a month ago, he called and wanted to know if maybe there were some other options, particularly with respect to the financing side of things that the city might look at. And so we sat down and discussed kind of the traditional options that are out there for communities with respect to water and sewer improvements. And we talked about the Oklahoma Water Resources Board loan programs that are available to communities. In fact, Clinton has availed itself of that loan program over the last few years. We also talked about general obligation bonds, which, as you know, are voted on by the people and repaid from ad valorem property taxes that are levied to retire those types of bonds. Then we also talked about utility system revenue bonds. Revenue bonds is something that the Public Works Authority over the last 25 or 30 years has been able to go to market and issue your bonds as utility revenue bonds. So then it became a question of really looking at costs in terms of what is going to be the ultimate cost of these types of financing and program alternatives, and then what ultimately would be the impact on rates within the community. Now, I think everybody recognizes that a project of this magnitude is going to have to be repaid, all right, from additional revenues that would have to be generated by the community, and that it will require some type of rate increase. The concept, frankly, was to try to mitigate, all right, the increase in water rates as you go forward in looking at the project. And so with that, we do have a presentation. I'm going to ask Ben to be my clicker here as we go through this. I think the council can see that on their screens. We do have copies available for the public after the meeting if they so chose. Let's just go to the next page. One of the things we typically start out with when we talk to communities about financing is we kind of take an assessment and a stock of their existing debt, existing obligations. What I tell councils is before you start talking about taking on additional debt, let's kind of see where you are on your existing obligations. Well, the good news, frankly, is the Clinton Public Works Authority really does not have a significant amount of debt outstanding right now, and a lot of that debt is actually going to be dropping off in the next few years. You can see from this chart, this is on page 2, that we show the Water Resources Board. That was a small loan that you took out several years ago for some water system improvements. You're paying about $45,000 a year in principal and interest on that, and it'll actually be retired within the next 6 years or so. The 2012 bond payment that we show on the chart relates to a refinancing that the authority did in 2012. We basically just refinanced some older debt in order to take advantage of interest rates. And that's going to be significantly falling off in the next 3 years. In fact, in 2017, that will be the last year of a significant payment, and then you can see that there'll be a smaller payment for a couple of years, and then that debt is gone. The importance of that is that there will be some freed up revenues, all right, that you're now using to make those bond payments that could go towards any type of additional financing that you ultimately might want to look at. We go to the next page, please. This particular chart is the project budget as presented in the Oklahoma Water proposal back on dated September 11th. It was presented to council on September 16th. You can see the components. This is right out of that proposal. There are various aspects, obviously, of the project. I know you're very familiar with it, so we won't go into that in any detail. The purpose of this was to show that the total project cost budget is about $28.5 million, and that is the number that we used in trying to determine some type of cost comparison. All right. Go to the next one, please. This is on page 4. This is again right out of the Oklahoma Water proposal, page C-2, where they show the year 1 cost. And there are several different components to this. And I think you all had a significant presentation on this and probably know it well, but I think we ought to take a minute to look at it. There are basically the financing cost and then amortization costs associated with the plant and wells and pipeline and ad valorem taxes. Then, of course, we expect the operation and maintenance costs associated with this project to go up to be a significant factor going forward. That's shown at about $1,850,000 between fixed and variable costs. And then income taxes that would be paid by Oklahoma Water Oklahoma Water in their proposal that would actually be paid by the city. So the first year cost, again, this was presented in their proposal, was about $5.2 million. Now, a point on the ad valorem tax. There is certainly a possibility, and I guess it's a good possibility from visiting with Mr. Skiles, that they can qualify for a 5-year exemption under state rules for ad valorem. And so that $342,000 that is shown there for ad valorem taxes that would be paid by the city as part of your cost, we have, as you'll see in a moment, we have taken in consideration a 5-year exemption from that. But then after 5 years, those taxes would be back on the roads. The cost per water, okay, again, under their proposal that they presented, assuming that you were able to get the ad valorem tax exemption, was about $7.62 per thousand. Again, that comes right out of their proposal. Okay? All right. What we kind of discussed and came to a conclusion, because we know time is of the essence, even though we did get a good rain, I guess, the other night that helped out a little bit. But in looking at the state loan programs, all right, the time associated with going through those programs is rather lengthy. And it seemed to me that the critical aspect was certainly cost, but also timing. And so what we have been proposing is that the utility, Public Works Authority, actually issue revenue bonds that would be backed by water and sewer revenues and the 1 cent capital improvement sales tax that is now currently being levied by the city. That's the same security that actually is securing the 2012 bonds. So the new issue, if you proceed, would be on what we call parity or equally secured basis with the 2012 bonds that are outstanding that again are going to be paying off here in the next few years. We have assumed a 30-year term under the Oklahoma Water proposal, as you know, is a 40-year contract, a 40-year term was being proposed. We think 30 years would be a good target in order to amortize any debt for these projects. We've assumed an interest rate of about a little over 4%. Now, one thing we're going to talk about in just a moment is where interest rates are. And if you've just been following it in the paper or on the news, you know that we've actually seen a significant decline in interest rates just in the last few days. There's economic issues in Europe. Retail sales came out just the other day, they were not as strong as people thought. And so we've actually seen interest rates kind of fall off the table over the last few days. If we went to market today, all right, with this type of an issue that we're talking about, we think the rate would probably be in the neighborhood of about 3.75%, much less than what we've actually run our analysis on. And we think that is a pretty conservative approach. The annual bond payment at 4.15% would be around $2.2 million a year. If rates were lower than that, then obviously the payment would be less. We would go to the rating agencies and ask them to review the credit of the Public Works Authority. Right now, there is no credit rating on the Public Works Authority. When you did the 2012 bond, it was a short-term issue, and it wasn't really necessary to actually get a national credit rating. But on an issue of this magnitude, we think that would be helpful. And we've had experience with other communities, and so we think that we could get an A category rating. If we get an A category rating, that allows us then to go to a municipal bond insurance company and have to get a policy that would basically guarantee principal and interest on the debt, and you could issue your bonds with that insurance company's credit rating, which would be AA. That is something that we would certainly explore. We just did a transaction for the Blanchard Municipal Improvement Authority, a smaller transaction, about $4.5 million. And we were able to get an A credit rating for Blanchard and also get a municipal bond insurance policy commitment at very attractive premiums. So that is how it will be structured. If you go to the next page, please, this is going to be page 6. I just put this in here again because of what interest rates have done. This is a chart showing tax-exempt interest rates over the last 2.5 years or so. You can see that according to this chart, rates kind of bottomed out in December of 2012. In fact, gentlemen, that was kind of a historical low of interest rates. We saw a run-up in rates last year significantly because of some of the Fed policies, Federal Reserve Board policies, but rates really kind of peaked, okay, in December of 2013, and ever since then, over the last few months, they've been coming down. I guess the point of this is that when you have to borrow money, you want to try to do it when rates are low. We certainly feel like we're in that kind of a position to be able to take advantage of some of the lowest interest rates that we've seen. If you go to page 7, this is the sizing analysis or calculation with respect to utility revenue bond issue. There are several components here. We show the project fund, that's the $28.5 million, all right, consistent with the Oklahoma Water proposal. There would typically need to be a reserve fund established, which is equal to about 1 year's payment. That's kind of required by the market as additional creditor security. One of the things we did in Blanchard's situation was we actually got a surety bond to cover that reserve fund deposit. And so we didn't have to issue additional bonds to establish that reserve. We just paid a one-time premium, and then there was a surety bond that acted in that as an alternate to a reserve fund. So that's something that could be reduced, all right, if we can get the bond insurance company to agree to that. Second, or the third item that's kind of the big ticket item is capitalized interest. We understand that the rate increase necessary to accomplish anything is going to be pretty significant. So what we were trying to do here was to basically defer, all right, that rate increase as long as reasonably possible, so as not to put too much of a burden on your water rate payers. So we actually would include in the financing 2 years of payments called capitalized interest, and then those payments would be made out of that account. Then rates would be put in place to pay for the annual bond payments thereafter. We can mitigate or reduce this, all right, if we put rates in place sooner than that. We were looking at probably a rate increase going into effect 1.5 years, 2 years from now. If we, and we don't make that decision today, but if we actually put rates in place and had revenues coming in, then, and to make bond payments, then we would not have to require capitalized interest, and it would significantly reduce the bond amount. The other items there are costs associated with the revenue bond issue. We're looking at an issue, when you total it up, about $35 million to accomplish this project, all right? So that's kind of the components of the issue. Now, if you go to the next page, please, this is page 8. This is the cost comparison. All we've done here, guys, all right, is we show the Oklahoma Water costs, and then the CPWA, Public Works Authority's taxes and financing costs. You can see that on the financing costs, the net financing costs are about $3 million less. The operation and maintenance costs, all right, are the same. All right, we're assuming that they would be the same under either option. That's for 40 years. Then we show property or ad valorem and corporate income taxes. And, you know, that's the big difference, frankly, is that, you know, by the PWA being able to issue its own debt and being able to proceed, all right, then there would not be the payment of the corporate income taxes or ad valorem taxes. And so when you net out the difference, all right, it's in the order of about $37 million less, all right, with respect to the authority actually moving ahead on its own financing, all right? And that's a key kind of cost comparison that we want you to be aware of.
Are you taking into account the difference in time from 40 to 30 years?
Yes, sir, we are, okay? Because the PWA financing would be for 30 years, the Oklahoma Water proposal would be for 40 years. Okay? So we do take that into consideration. If you go to page 9, this is also kind of an important part of the overall financial analysis, all right? As I said earlier, you're going to have some debt falling off in the next few years. In order to reduce any kind of water rate increase that may be necessary, all right, we took in consideration that some of those revenues that you previously had been using to make debt payments would become available. They would be released as your 2012 bonds paid off. The key components of that are that you've been using about $350,000 a year in your sewer revenues to make payments. And so we assumed that about $250,000 of that would be available to go to new payments going forward after the 2012 bonds were retired or paid off. And then you've been using a portion of your sales tax, 1 cent capital improvement sales tax, to make those payments as well. And so a portion of that would also be available. In round numbers, and this is important, okay, about $750,000 of existing revenues have been used to make your 2012 bond payment. We're proposing that about $500,000 of that, not all of it, but about $500,000 of that be kind of redirected, all right, to this new bond payment, again, to reduce interest rates. The other key portion, point here on this page is that you have been paying about $1 million a year to Foss Reservoir Master Conservancy District in overages above the allocation or allotment that the city of Clinton has under your contract with Foss. Obviously, if you develop your own water supply through wells, make that available to go into your system, that's going to reduce the amount that you have to buy from Foss. We have made an assumption that initially that about $500,000 would be freed up in those revenues to Foss that would be retained by the authority to be used for any new bond payment, and then eventually up to about $750,000. Okay? Now again, you've been paying about $1 million a year the last 2 or 3 years in those overages, but that's an important aspect, all right, of this financing. This would also be available if you did the Oklahoma Water proposal in terms of those revenues being freed up. Let's go to page 10, please. This is the water rate impact. What we show here are the current water rates within the city of Clinton. Of course, you raised rates in July of this year slightly, all right, according to your CPI adjustment that you make. But you can see here the current water rates, and this applies to both residential and commercial customers. There's a minimum rate of $16.34 per month, and that's up to 2,000 gallons per month. Then you can see the next increment is for the next couple of $1,000s, and then you can see each of the subsequent increments there. And eventually, over 500,000 gallons per month, the rate is $5.41 per thousand. All right? That's the current water rates. What we did, all right, was we looked at the percentage increase, okay, that would be necessary under a couple of the proposals, all right, or the two proposals. There would have to be 160% increase under the Oklahoma water proposal, and then about 100% or under the CPA or the authority issuing its revenue bonds. To try to equate that to dollars for your customers, on the minimum, we would go from $16.34 up to about $42 under the Oklahoma water proposal, and about $33 under the revenue bond scenario. So that's about a $9 per month difference. And then for average customers that may use in the 5,000 gallon range, you can see that the difference is about $18. Right? So I mean, under any circumstances, according to our analysis and opinion, that the rates necessary to accomplish the project would be less, all right, if the authority actually issued its own bonds. Now, these rates are just looking at percentage increases. We are not in a position to recommend exactly what the rate structure would look like today, but we want to at least give you an idea, okay, of what the difference in the rates might be. If you go to the last page, and then of course we'll let answer the questions of the council and the public. We understand that time is of the essence, all right? And so what we've done here, guys, is we put together a schedule, all right, of the tasks necessary to actually accomplish this financing and get funds to this city, all right, within about the next 60 days. You're meeting today to basically make some kind of a decision on how you're going to proceed. We would immediately get started on documents. In fact, Ben Oglesby has already been pulling together some information that would be needed to prepare an offering document and also to provide information to the rating agencies and bond insurance companies. We think it's important for the council, the authority, to kind of establish the project scope and sign off on the cost, if you will, all right? And also on the water rate implementation process, we're targeting a special meeting on or about October 30th. There's something magic about these dates, but we just wanted to kind of let you know what we think the steps would be. We would be in a position to submit information to the rating agency and the bond insurance companies in early November. We would come back to you if you proceed with this path at your first regular meeting in November with a preliminary resolution preliminarily authorizing the issuance of the bonds. We would expect to be able to get ratings and bond insurance commitments on or about November 20th. It's going to take the rating agencies about 3 weeks to kind of review things and provide a credit rating. Then we would come back to the authority for a final approval right before Thanksgiving. We targeted November 25th. There's something, again, magic about that date. We just wanted to kind of put a schedule together. The bonds would be marketed by an underwriting firm in early December, and we anticipate actually closing the issue and putting money in the bank, all right, for the authority on or about December 12th. Again, we understand that the timing is critical, and so we just wanted to provide you the assurance that if you select this particular approach, that our team is in place to actually accomplish this within a very timely manner. So that's the presentation, Mr. Skiles. Again, we'd be glad to address any questions of the council.
You know, I would comment that the cost of the water, and in this case, we have agreements with Canute and Mr. Dixon, those costs are not in here. This presentation was put together as a comparison from the bond option to the water option, and those costs were in neither presentation. So, you know, for the council and the public to sit here and think think that these numbers are all there are. That's not true. This is just a true apples to apples comparison. I want you to know that. Rick, if I were to summarize, as I see this, and I'm looking for pros and cons, either way, both are viable options. This is not to be against one and for the other. This is to be here for the community of Clinton. That's what this presentation is about. As I see it, the project cost savings is about 36+ million as presented. If we were to raise rates, and we wouldn't need that capitalized interest, I think you call it in there, the savings could be substantial. That's money that wouldn't be in the bond, that we wouldn't have to pay interest on for 30, kind of like 5.5. The life of the finance is 30 versus 40 years. The water rate structure under your proposal would be at the discretion of the council.
Exactly.
That's who sets the rates. Under the Oklahoma water proposal, due to the fact that it's a private entity providing a utility to the municipality, the Corporation Commission comes into play. And the Corporation Commission would ultimately determine the rate that Oklahoma Water sold water to the city of Clinton. And then the council would have to choose as to whether they passed it on to the citizens or less or more. But the council wouldn't be in absolute control under the Oklahoma Water. Timing of the project, it is crucial. And there's an item number 6 here, but it plays into what you're talking about. Brian Meyer with Burton McDonald is here. And for the reason to answer the question, are we taking steps back? Are we causing ourselves time issues again? And Brian will make himself available to answer those questions at the discretion of the council. As I see it, that is what I see as either the pros or cons to the city of Clinton. Do you have any additional comments on that?
I think that pretty much summarizes the pros and cons that we've been discussing.
This is not, this agenda item is not an action item. That would come if the council chooses to take action on the presentation made by Rick, would be on agenda item 5. That's all, that's the only comment that I have.
Well, I think you put it very well. I mean, it's simple, you know. I think your presentation was excellent. The only one thing that I think that we should consider, in addition to what Rick has said, I think that we should look at a half-cent, let the people vote on a half-cent sales tax that would help defer some of the water rate adjustments. And if we voted a half-cent sales tax that went into effect until our current fire station tax is paid off, and then drop off and pick it up, that would save a significant amount of money.
That is certainly something that would, again, kind of mitigate the water rate increases. If you can think about it this way, a half-cent sales tax generates about $730,000 right now within the city of Clinton. That would probably allow us to reduce the rates, generally estimated about 25%. So that's what it's worth. If we had a half-cent increase now, then as you said, Mr. Rogoff, when we went in 2019, when the 0.95% drops off, then it was council's decision, then that basically be borrowing against the 0.5% now, and you just wouldn't ask for the voters to approve that 0.5% when it expired in 2019.
Right.
Also, as you may be aware, the county looks like they're going to be dropping their 0.5% sales tax sometime next year. That's been on the books for a few years, and so that would, I think, play into trying to keep the community in a competitive position. All right, with respect to your sales tax rate relative to other communities in the area. So I think that is certainly a viable option and should be explored, because it would reduce the rate increase by, again, by about 25%.
Is the fire station a half cent or 40 cent?
Actually, it's 0.4%, I think.
0.49.
0.49, it's about 0.5%. But it would expire in 2019.
We have a feel for how much more the Dixon well would, if having the general idea is to, when Dixon well comes online, how much more is there gonna be in terms of rate increase?
No, like, oh, well, it's 42 cents for the first 120 million gallons, because we did, and part of the agreement is he gets $50,000 per year, take it or pay, but we get 120 million gallons of water with that. So that's 42 cents per thousand. Anything we take past that amount is 50 cents per thousand gallons. Now, what that equates to in water rates, I really can't throw that out.
Well, we've been waiting because obviously it was part of that also is not only water costs, but then also the development of the well and the line. And until we really have a good idea of what those true costs are gonna be, you know, then we, once we know that, then we can actually determine what the rate increase would need to be. We just don't have a firm cost yet.
Well, I think, in my opinion, this is a no-brainer. I mean, I've been involved at the request of the city manager in trying to negotiate with Oklahoma Water, and that's an exercise in futility. And I was in on a conference call where they agreed to amend the 2A contract, and we all have a copy of that amended 2A contract. Ryan did an excellent job in doing exactly what we agreed to on the phone, and still haven't gotten anything done. This is a no-brainer. We need to move. The people in town think we need to move. Let's move forward. Let's get this finished today. I'd make a motion that.
That's not a number 5.
I know, I'm gonna go to 2A.
Okay.
I'm gonna make a motion that we do not do 2A with Oklahoma Water.
We have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Trustee Rudolph,
Yes.
trustee Hewlin,
Yes.
trustee Simon,
Yes.
trustee Lowry,
Yes.
chairman Adams.
Yeah, yes.
I'd also I'd go to item 3. I make the motion to adopt, not.
No, item 4, yeah.
I mean, item 4, that we do not do phase 2 with Oklahoma Water.
Jason?
I'll second that motion as well.
Trustee Rudolph,
Yes.
trustee Hewlin,
Yes.
trustee Simon,
Yes.
trustee Lowry,
Yes.
chairman Adams.
Yes.
I'd make the motion that we enter into an agreement with municipal finance on,
There is a resolution to be approved. I think you have a copy of it. And the number of the resolution is on there.
mine doesn't have.
You know, but before we go any further down that line, because you haven't finished your motion yet, I think the question that the public and the council, certainly the public especially wants to hear, because of the time that has been discussed so much, is, and I'm going to direct this at Brian Meyer from Burger McDonald is here. Brian, based upon your knowledge, which you've been involved with this project from its inception, should the council choose to go with the bond option, how do you, and this is almost an unethical question, because there's some interaction taking place between the city and DEQ that we really can't discuss here, that could greatly expedite the Dixon well, and that is the issue. But with that put aside, how do you see the effect of the bond option on the timing of this project?
You You know, that really is a pretty broad-based question, and I think it affects different parts of it, you know, to a greater degree than others. You know, the truth, from an engineering standpoint, the financing mechanism of the project doesn't change that. I mean, the project elements are still the same, we're doing the same things. Probably the biggest thing from a time standpoint that was discussed early on was the benefits of design build that was embedded in the original proposal that would have some procurement efficiencies in how quickly you could get construction underway, what degree of detail had to be included in the design to get construction packages out the door. That's really probably the key. So you really end up looking at the procurement elements of the construction aspects and making sure that you're in compliance with all your procurement laws. So there could be some bid times added in from a initiation standpoint. And what we've been doing, you know, I'd say from day one when this project started back in May is working toward, you know, the point where you've got a design in place. And even over the last month, I mean, there's been elements of the Dixon property development that's continued just, you know, seamlessly, I would say. And it's a lot of it's the discussion with DEQ, the permitting process, you know, working out the fine details of all the work, such as working with the railroad. So from that standpoint, it doesn't change anything. Where it's kind of unknown is how you would procure some of those contract or construction-related services.
And in this situation, I don't want to lead everybody to believe that DEQ is a stumbling block. They haven't been. They have been as receptive as is possible when we walk in their doors. They understand the situation in Clinton and have assured us that expediting the issues that we bring to them are a priority in every department in DEQ. And so far, that's been their action, as well as OWRB and what little interaction we have with the Corporation Commission.
Yes, so that's correct. I mean, that's been the common thread of any of the discussions that we've had with permitting agencies, DEQ or OWRB, is that they don't want to be the hurdle that has to be crossed to make this project successful in a timely manner. So I think regulatory cooperation isn't an issue, and they recognize the urgency of which City of Clinton's operating under.
And due to the fact there's an affluent issue with the RO plant, we will still continue to interact with the Corporation Commission.
Correct. I think as we discussed on a very high level previously, there's the structure of the permitting process for disposal of RO concentrate. There's been some new changes that basically supported by an MOU between DEQ and Corporation Commission that really should streamline that process. So yeah, absolutely. There's the new permitting process in place that should be of significant value. And then also the realization that permitting process or timeline may or may not line up with the needs, the practical needs of the project. So that there could be interim measures put in place to deal with waste streams generated before there's permanent solutions in place. So that's been acknowledged as well.
Can I ask a question? Back up just a minute. The engineering portion and the regulatory portions are, if I'm hearing you correctly, they're not going to change. Those are, you mentioned that we may have some type of an increase in the time frame because the city has to go through the bidding processes, or is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, that's something that would need to be looked at very closely.
What kind of time frame are we looking at?
Well, state requirements are, I believe once we put an RFP out, it's a 21-day issue.
So that's one.
So for the savings that we have at this point, we extend the project basically 21 days.
I believe that the bidding process time that's mandated upon the municipalities, there was very little difference, very little real difference between that and what you were going to experience if you took the other option. That comes from conversations that I've had with them. Now,
They were going to bid most of what
Yeah, I don't know how much they were gonna bid, how much they were gonna design and build, and I certainly wouldn't want to speak for them because they're not here. But one of the things the city will have to do is approve an engineering firm for this project. We have a regularly scheduled council meeting on Tuesday, and I expect to have an engineering services agreement particular to this project on that agenda.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, now, you were already going ahead and working on the engineering for the Dixon.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How close are we on that?
You know, I would say very close. I mean, the intent was all along to have a, plans and specifications ready for, DEQ, approval, basically within the next couple of weeks. So that was, and that is on track, has always been on track.
Once presented to DEQ, how long do you foresee that permitting process to take?
You know, in all reality, and Mark was at the last meeting, you know, there's a few things on the Dixon site that are really of concern to them, the well construction, the pipeline tie-ins. It's bottom line, it's a fairly straightforward project in their view. The tact that we thought we would take is that we would sit down, deliver those plans specifications, review them in a face-to-face meeting to streamline that process. My guess is that, you know, within a week after a face-to-face meeting, we could hope to have some construction permits. You know, that may be overly optimistic, but based on their, you know, spirit of cooperation that they portrayed, I think they would do what it takes to meet the city's requirements and those goals.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, motion out there, y'all. Do you want to finish it?
What's the resolution?
Oh.
Sean,
1403.
I move that we adopt the resolution, PW 14.
I'll second that motion.
Trustee Rodoff,
Yes.
trustee Keeling,
Yes.
trustee Simon,
yes.
trustee Lowry,
Yes.
chairman Adams.
Yes.
Rick, there's an agreement to be signed between the city and your firm. Did you tell me that agreement is referred to in the resolution?
Yes, the resolution actually authorizes professional services agreements for our firm and also with Public Finance Law Group and your local city attorney, all right? Those agreements are obviously contingency based, so, you know, unless and until the financing gets, I'm sorry, and tax council too.
So the authorization of the resolution authorized the
Execution of those
of the
agreements,
agreement.
which we provided previously.
Right, we've got copies of that, and it calls for the chairman and the treasurer, secretary of the authority to sign.
That's it.
Oh, we got, okay, we've already discussed.
We've already, yeah, Brian's already, he got that out of order.
Are there any questions from the audience? Consider a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
Second that motion.
Trustee Simon,
Yes.
trustee Lowry,
Yes.
trustee Keeling,
Yes.
trustee Rodoff,
Yes.
chairman Adams.
Yes.